Inside the clean glow of a Louis Vuitton boutique, the strangest artifact is still the trunk, a box built to protect wealth long before the brand became wealth itself. The company now belongs to a luxury empire of lawyers, shareholders, celebrities, counterfeit raids, and global storefronts. But its first advantage came from a hungry teenager walking toward Paris. Louis Vuitton did not begin with old money, a fashion school, or a family dynasty, only rough rural labor and a practical understanding of what travelers feared losing. The mystery is how a survival craft became a symbol of status so powerful that the family name eventually escaped the family that made it valuable. Louis Vuitton was born in 1821 in Anche, a small village in eastern France, far from the imperial hotels and polished shopping streets later tied to his name. His early world was not luxury, but work, weather, wood, cloth, tools, farms, and the harsh arithmetic of families who had to make usefulness from almost nothing. As a teenager, he left home and made the long journey toward Paris, reportedly taking temporary work along the way and learning from craftsmen when food or shelter required it. That walk matters because the origin of the brand was not a fantasy of elegance, but a practical education in materials, hardship, movement, and survival. When Vuitton reached Paris in the late 1830s, the city was changing into a capital of status, with aristocrats, rail stations, hotels, merchants, and travelers moving through it. He found work as an apprentice boxmaker and packer, a trade that placed him close to wealthy clients without making him part of their world. In that business, luggage was never just luggage, because the rich were trusting strangers to protect dresses, documents, jewelry, hats, perfumes, and private possessions. Every trunk had to survive bad roads, crowded stations, damp weather, ship holds, servants, thieves, and the quiet panic of arriving somewhere without the things that prove status. Vuitton learned that elite travelers were buying more than containers, because they were buying order, discretion, protection, and the feeling that their lives could move safely. By the early 1850s, his craftsmanship connected him to Empress Eugenie, wife of Napoleon III, giving the young craftsman a credibility money alone could not buy. Royal attention worked like a silent advertisement, because one powerful client could turn a hidden trade into a trusted name among people who copied aristocratic taste. In 1854, Vuitton opened his own workshop in Paris, stepping out from behind other men's labels and placing his own name on the object. His most important idea was brutally simple, because rounded leather trunks looked traditional, but they were hard to stack and inefficient for a world beginning to travel faster. Vuitton developed lighter, flatter trunks using treated canvas, making them easier to store, easier to move, and better suited to trains, steamships, hotels, and modern schedules. The product worked because it solved a real problem at the exact moment travel was becoming more organized, more commercial, and more visible to the aspiring upper class. A Vuitton trunk did not only carry possessions through space, because it carried proof that its owner belonged to a world with servants, tickets, and destinations. By 1859, growing demand helped the business move into a larger workshop at Asnières, where craftsmen could produce beyond the narrow limits of one Paris shop. The workshop became more than a workplace because it turned a personal craft into a system with patterns, materials, training, quality control, and a name worth protecting. That protection became urgent almost immediately because once a trunk signaled money, competitors and counterfeiters had every reason to imitate the surface and steal the meaning. Here is the first crack in the Vuitton empire. The brand created value by becoming recognizable, then spent the next century fighting the consequences of being recognized. War nearly destroyed the business before any corporate takeover could, when the Franco-Prussian War shook Paris and left Vuitton returning to a damaged commercial world. Accounts describe his workshop and equipment as ruined or looted, forcing him to rebuild after years of work had been broken by forces outside his control. Instead of disappearing, Vuitton reopened in a stronger location near wealthy travelers, close to the movement of railways, hotels, money, and people who needed luggage quickly. The decision showed the strange logic of business after disaster, because ruins can erase a company or push it closer to the customers it was always chasing. After Louis died in 1892, his son Georges inherited more than a workshop, because he inherited a growing symbol that strangers were already trying to copy. The question facing Georges was simple and dangerous. How do you make a name visible enough to sell, but protected enough to keep from being stolen? In 1896, Georges introduced the now famous monogram canvas, turning his father's initials into a memorial, a trademark weapon, and a defensive wall against counterfeiters. The pattern became one of fashion's most recognized marks. But recognition has a price, because every copied bag proves the original symbol became powerful enough to exploit. As the company expanded beyond trunks, Louis Vuitton slowly moved from solving travel problems to selling aspiration, where leather goods became emotional objects with financial margins attached. If you follow fortunes and ruins, this is the kind of story worth staying with: money rising beautifully, power hardening quietly, and legacy becoming something no family can fully control. The darker chapters were not only commercial, because during the German occupation of France, later reporting and published allegations raised questions about Vuitton's conduct under the Vichy regime. Those allegations remain part of the brand's uncomfortable historical shadow, a reminder that luxury houses often preserve origin myths more carefully than the records that complicate them. By the 1970s, Louis Vuitton was respected, but still limited compared with the global machine it would become under Henry Rackmeyer, who married into the Vuitton family. Rackmeyer pushed the company toward direct retail, giving Vuitton more control over stores, margins, customer experience, scarcity, and the polished world surrounding every purchase. That shift mattered because luxury depends on control, and every uncontrolled retailer, discount, counterfeit, or weak presentation can damage the fragile illusion that supports high prices. International expansion followed, especially in Japan, and the old trunk maker became a modern business capable of scaling heritage without making it feel ordinary. In 1984, Louis Vuitton went public, turning a family name into a financial instrument and giving the company capital to expand far beyond its workshop origins. Then, in 1987, Louis Vuitton merged with Moët Hennessy to form LVMH, a luxury conglomerate, joining luggage, champagne, cognac, prestige, and corporate ambition. On paper, the merger promised strength, distribution, scale, and global power. But inside the new structure, competing executives and shareholders began fighting over control. Rackmeyer's conflict with Moët Hennessy leadership opened the door for Bernard Arnault, an investor who understood that luxury brands could be treated like conquered territory. Arnault maneuvered through the ownership battle and took control of LVMH by 1989, while Rackmeyer was pushed out and the Vuitton family era effectively ended. The brand did not collapse when the family lost power, which may be the most unsettling part of the entire story. Instead, Louis Vuitton became larger, colder, and more profitable, proving that a famous family name can survive perfectly well after the family itself becomes unnecessary. Under LVMH, Vuitton turned heritage into a global system, where scarcity, price discipline, celebrity architecture, legal enforcement, and creative directors all work toward the same illusion. Marc Jacobs pushed the house into modern fashion after becoming creative director in 1997, expanding its language into ready-to-wear, accessories, collaborations, and pop culture. Later collaborations with artists and streetwear figures showed how far the brand had traveled from custom trunks, because rebellion itself could be packaged and sold as luxury. The Supreme collaboration became the perfect symbol of the new Vuitton, where a streetwear name once associated with logo conflict became profitable enough to stand beside the monogram. But the counterfeit problem never disappeared, and Vuitton continued using lawsuits, investigators, customs actions, and trademark claims to fight the shadow economy created by its own desirability. The irony is hard to miss, because the more people dream of owning the symbol, the more valuable fake versions become in markets far from the boutique. Today, Louis Vuitton is not just a luggage house, and LVMH is not just a luxury group. but a vast machine for manufacturing controlled desire. The stores glow in major cities around the world, yet the original business logic remains almost unchanged from a trunk waiting beside a railway platform. Protect the valuable object, protect the name, protect the fantasy, and make the customer believe the journey feels different when the logo is visible. The ruins here are not abandoned factories or empty mansions, but a family legacy turned into an asset class managed by people who never needed the family. Keep watching Fortunes and Ruins for more stories where American and global wealth rises through ambition, survives through power, and leaves something human behind when control changes hands. Louis Vuitton began as a box meant to carry possessions through danger and ended as a corporate monument carrying status, secrecy, lawsuits, ambition, and a vanished family name.